Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the event today. I'm really excited to talk to you about something I'm really passionate about, and I think each and every one of you in this room will be passionate about too, because I know that you're people that are out there doing things, driving change in pockets all over New Zealand and from New Zealand into the big wide world. The thing I want to ask you about this morning is, have you ever found yourself in a situation where what someone expected of you or wanted you to do and what you believed you should do were poles apart? Has anyone felt that way before? Yeah, a lot of nods around the room, right? Might have been at school, it might have been your parents, it might have been with a project that you were trying to drive, some change that you wanted to see in the community. Well, I found myself in that situation in December 2013. I'll give a little bit of context. About 2 months prior, I'd received a phone call from the Australian Prime Minister, and he'd asked me if I'd lead a thing called the Youth Summit for the G20. And I'm going to be real, I had no clue what the G20 was when I got that phone call. He just said, can you volunteer 4 hours a week, and can you bring together like 100 young leaders at some stage of 2014? I was like, sure, I can do that. Got off the phone, jumped on Google, had a minor heart attack, because I worked out what the G20 was. Turns out these 20 countries make up 80% of the world's economy, 70% of the world's trade, and there are 1.5 billion young people in the G20. And all of a sudden, I've got responsibility for making sure that they're well represented. In December 2013, I was sitting in this room at this long table in Sydney with all the country flags of the world leaders scattered around that table. And I had 10 minutes next to the leader of the Business Summit and the Civil Society Summit to say what it was that we as young people were going to do with 12 months. And when I was doing my research, when I got this appointment, I struggled to find any evidence of the fact that despite years of being involved in the G20, that young people had actually been there. And when I'd call one of my mentors and I said, why is that the case? They said, well, I'd have two guesses. One is they've never really invited young people to the table. My second guess would be when they have, young people haven't really known how to show up. And so I sat there at this table, and I swear to you, I can't tell you what anyone else said that day, because I had the first panic attack of my life. I was sitting in this room doing everything I could to regulate my breathing and try and control myself, because all my head was saying was, this is the most powerful room I've ever been in. What do I say? Because I knew exactly what they wanted me to say. And in fact, it was reinforced to me a little while later. One of the big challenges that we had of our G20 year is we had a leader of the country hosting that didn't have time to meet with young people. Whole year, 12 months, and he was too busy in his schedule to be able to meet with young people. So we set a record that we didn't want to set in the Australian G20 year. That was we became the first G20 where the leader of the country hosting didn't meet with young people. So we sat in that room that day. I said to Sherpas, if we promise, this is the right-hand people of all the world leaders, we're going to be more evidence-based, we're going to be more pragmatic, we're going to be more outcome-focused than we've ever been. Will you promise you'll give us a seat at the table at every G20 table? And they called my bluff and they said yes. And so I quit my job. I lived in Perth, Western Australia at the time, far-flung part of the country. And I moved over on a red-eye flight, and we started going about trying to make happen what nobody believed we could. And that was that we were going to become the first youth summit in G20 history to influence the world leaders' agenda. Now, you can know when someone's expectations are that low of you that that's not the first time you're going to face that barrier, right? And we came at it again when we got emails like this, and we had to think about alternative ways of going about doing things, because we knew that we had to defy those expectations. There was such a big purpose and a reason for young people being at that table. And so we had to think about how do we build partnerships with business and civil society and use their weight and influence to get us in the door, to get the ear of influential people. How do we mobilize tens of thousands of young people like yourselves, train them up with the skills and the information to go and lobby their leaders? And that's exactly what we did. And despite the fact that we didn't have a prime minister that would meet with us, we had a US president, we had the head of the IMF, we had the UN Secretary General and the Prime Minister of India, who all got behind our cause because we thought about How do we not see this as a dead-end brick wall? How do we go round it, over it, under it, keep creating and move past this because we believe in what it is that we're trying to do? And for me, one of the big things I learned during the G20 year is we need a generation of rebels with a cause. You know what? I don't know where along the way we decided that we should give responsibility for driving change to the people that we would make the library monitors at high school, but somewhere we did. You know, we gave it to the ones who kind of are really straight-laced and barely move outside the rules, and if they do, it's through adding another rule to the rule list, right? And what we need is people who are going to shake it up a little bit, who are prepared to actually do. Maybe they'll come back and apologize afterwards, but they're definitely not asking permission. They are giving it to themselves. I'm going to talk quickly about one of the big reasons that we need to do that as young people, and that is something we all know too well. The big issue we put on the World Leaders Agenda last year, we did indeed become the first youth summit to ever influence the World Leaders Agenda. And the issue we got on there was youth unemployment. And it's the UN that are calling it the ticking time bomb, because 1 in 3 young people in our world right now aren't in education, training, or employment. 1 in 3 of us. Not only that, we've got what they're calling the silver tsunami coming. And that is the code for the old retirement wave, right? All the aged population. Within a 20-year period, we're going to have a halving in the number of people, our generation, that are working in the workforce to support the population over 65. This is across Australia and New Zealand. So we're going to have to do a lot more with a lot less. And the other thing we've got to think about is our workforce is getting automated. A bit of a take on the old famous image, right? But we're looking at reports right now that are saying between 40 and 70% of jobs are going to be automated within the next 2 decades. Huge change and transition happening, and we as young leaders have to navigate that uncertainty. We have to find our way through that, and we have to be able to innovate. But this is one of the big issues we need rebels with a cause on right now, because the system isn't moving fast enough. And we need to be creating ideas that are going to go around it. We need to be finding new ways to lobby and engage our leaders on it. And we need to be working together to change the tidal wave of all these issues and where they sit and the position that's putting young people in. Now I'm going to talk about 3 things really quickly that I think are critical for young leaders who are driving in this rebel with a cause generation. Hands up who knows this organisation. Okay, keep your hands up if you basically associate them with being pale, male and stale. Yeah, cool. I just need to check we're on the same base. Cool. So this is an organisation that taught me lesson 1, Rotary. Good to know that we all understand what Rotary is. I was doing some work and Rotary provided some seed funding for a project, and I came back and I was presenting on Rotary, and these people came up to me and they said, "Why aren't you a member of our club?" I'm thinking in my head, pale, male, stale, don't think I belong in that. And they said, no, we're doing it differently. Come along, check it out. They played this stat, the first meeting I ever went to. They are still the largest community service organisation in the world. 1.2 million members. 1.2 million, huge. But, anyone see the problem I'm pointing out at? 2% under 30? 12% women? I remember looking around that room working out why no one else looked like they had alarm bells going off in their head. Because that's not pretty. I've since found out 25% of their membership are over 70. Yeah, a little bit skewed, right? But it was interesting to me because you look at that and I go, this organisation have nearly single-handedly eradicated polio from the planet. They work in every pocket of disadvantage we have got around the world. And yet only 2% of our generation, and our generation are unbelievably community-minded. I don't care what the media says. Only 2% are trickling through. Why? And the point was, there was no why. I put my hand up to get involved in this challenge, and the mistake that you make with Rotary is when you put your hand up, this happens overnight, right? Yeah. 6 months later, I find myself as the world's youngest president of a Rotary club, trying to turn a Rotary model around and prove that it can be done differently and we can engage young people and we can engage women in it. But the big takeaway, number 1, was there was no why in Rotary anymore. They'd spent so many years putting how and what over the top of it, you know, process, procedure, rules. You go to a meeting and there's pictures of the Queen in the corner and you're singing the national anthem, which only serves to prove that Rotarians are tone deaf. right? But importantly, when you asked a Rotarian about Rotary, they told you what day they met and what was on the breakfast menu. They didn't lead with why, which is the moment that they saw firsthand the way that organisation changed lives, and they put the badge on and they never took it off. So key number one is purpose-driven organisations that invert the way organisations have been working for a decade. And by that I mean they lead with the why and they bring the how and the what afterwards. Lesson 2, really quickly. I was working in Kenya building a microfinance project, and we were working with 12 women that were earning an average of 75 Australian cents a day. Try to feed anywhere from 3 to 11 kids on that. This particular day, we were walking to this giant sea container that we would teach them skills in every afternoon. And we walked a different way through the slums. And I've been told since we arrived that the women had to walk about 2.5 k's a day to be able to get fresh water. And this particular day, we stumbled on a well that was 400 metres from where we taught in the afternoon. And I felt like I was Christopher Columbus, right? Like I just found a well in the middle of the slums that no one had stumbled upon. And I said to our Swahili interpreter, hold on, isn't that a well? And the answer came back, yeah, it is. I'm going, well, is it broken? No, it's not. Thinking, okay, well, it's far closer, so I'm not really getting the math here. The answer, I said to him, why aren't we drinking from this well? And the answer came back, well, it's built on ancient battlegrounds, and there's bad spirits in the ground. And so we can't drink this water, or we'll get bad spirits in us and we'll die. Now, if you'd given me 100 guesses, I never would have guessed that that was the reason we weren't drinking from that well. And critically, neither did the aid and development organisation that every single one of you would know that spent $20,000 building that well. Did they have the right why? Yeah, they did. They absolutely needed better access to water. High grade, quality, sanitation, all of that project was absolutely bang on the right issue. But because they'd failed to engage, to co-design, to do anything to bring the community and involve them in the process, the best of intentions had gone horribly awry. It was like they started aiming at the bullseye on the board over there, but they went so far off trajectory they didn't even hit the board. And the key lesson for me in that is understanding the importance of working with and engaging the people that you seek to serve, and being as open to learning from them as you are to serving them. That two-way transfer is absolutely key, and so often we ride in on our shiny, like a white knight, and think that we know the answers and we're here to solve everything. And that two-way transfer is absolutely key, and we need more active involvement. I'm going to skip over this one quickly and move on to one final thing. And that is doing things that you're afraid of. It was funny when the topic was mentioned this morning of what's the craziest thing you've done, because probably this is it. February this year, I went on an expedition of 100 Australian entrepreneurs to Antarctica. This is me jumping into the Antarctic water just after we crossed the Antarctic Circle. It's about -2 degrees, and it feels like you've had 10 espressos in one hit, but you can't feel a thing. So you're trying to climb back out of a ladder and you have no sensation whatsoever. It's one of the strangest things I've ever experienced. But this comes from the fact that I'm fortunate to have a best mate who's crazy enough when I pick up a phone and say to him, I have got a mad idea, says, awesome, I'm in, before he asks me what it is. And on New Year's Eve, I called him and I said, I have a great idea. And he said, awesome, I'm in, what are we doing? And I said, I've just finished reading this book, Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, for those of you who are interested. Yeah, brilliant book. I cannot more highly recommend it. And in this book, it talks about there's the things we're afraid of that we most need to do. And he said, yeah, what's your point? And I said, I want to test that hypothesis every day of the year for 2015. Every day of 2015, we're going to do something we're afraid of. And we have to log it in an app called Make Me that facilitates group challenges. And we've got consequences on the line. I'm a sports nut. I lose sport if we don't do it. He's the biggest sweet tooth I know. He loses sugar if he doesn't do it. But the point has been, we have done some extraordinary things. I've held myself off the side of boats. I've taken acting and singing classes. I've pitched crazy big ideas. I've said no to things that I don't know that I would have had the courage to say no to. But the thing that I've learned is it's actually not about hurtling yourself outside your comfort zone every day. It's about the commitment to take a little step but do it continuously. Because every day, even if it's the babyest, littlest step, your comfort zone expands. And it's amazing what you'll discover about yourself. It's amazing the new relationships that will form, the opportunities that will come. And I'm talking about things like putting your hand up and being the one to ask the question, when you'd never be that person because, oh my gosh, what if my question's not good enough? Putting yourself forward for an opportunity when you're not quite sure if you've got the skill set to be able to do it or make it. Do it anyway. Commit in. Go all in. And I think that one of the biggest learnings that I've had is the power of continually pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because the thing that converts a rebel with a cause who's got a good why and has the preparedness to think differently and bring new people around an idea from someone who thinks about it to doing it is the preparedness to actually have the courage to step outside the comfort zone. And the more that you can make that a habit, the less overwhelmingly scary it is to do the sorts of things and to drive the sorts of change we so desperately need you to lead in this world. So, do something you're afraid of. I double dare you. Thank you.